Is just a fancy way to say change, right? I currently am in a role with BMW Manufacturing, doing really responsible for all leadership development and transformation management, and enjoy so much what I get to do. In fact, I love it so much, sometimes it's hard to turn it off. I really see my role and my purpose as supporting the leaders that people want to follow. And I think all of us may probably have an example where we might have really liked our job, but had a leader that made it incredibly challenging, and due to that may have left. So if we can develop our leaders to be the types of leaders that people want to follow, then perhaps we'll see a greater retention of the talent that we want to have with us. So I'm really excited to be able to do that for BMW. Today, we're going to actually talk about a little bit about authentic communication. And before we get started, Sally, do you have the poll open for people to answer?
Yeah, let me go ahead and open that poll up.
So what does authentic communication mean to you? This is just something to do a little bit fun, but a lot of times, we hear words, authentic, transformation, and we use them so frequently, we don't ever really stop to think, what does that really mean? And just to have a little bit of fun. Is this the latest buzzword? Is this the latest fad? Are there a million books out there around authentic communication? So good many of you decided to say, I'm going to be truthful and honest. It's being genuine, which you're absolutely correct. If you answered that it's your regular way of communicating, then I hope that you will please share some of your experiences while I'm talking today. It should be the same as regular communication, but it's just not, because we're all human. So thank you, Sally. I appreciate you putting that up. I'm going to share my screen, and please forgive me if I have difficulties in doing this, because I am learning Zoom just like everybody else. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Thank you. So, like I said, forgive me.
Yes.
My virtual facilitation skills are being developed on the fly. I love to facilitate and speak to large groups of people, and really like connecting to people in the room. Virtual is a little tough because trying to look at everybody at the same time that you're speaking lessens some of the interaction. So if you will, please use the opportunity to chat, to add, to stop me if you have any questions. My purpose for doing this is to try and make it as interactive as possible. I've also found that when I'm doing something like this virtually, I speed up. I seem to go a lot faster. So I don't want to keep you longer than I need to, but I do definitely want to hear from you and your experiences as I go ahead. And one more thing, I can advance my slides, but I can't back my slides up for some reason, and didn't have enough time to figure that part out. So if you have a question about a previous slide, I'm more than happy to share with you the presentation at the end. So authentic communication. Communication is truly crucial for you to be successful in whatever you do, whether you are a leader or not. In fact, if you were to type communication skill building in a Google search engine, you'll get so many hits back that it looks like everybody's talking about communication and the skills. And to me, there's a lot more underlying. It's not just communication. And so with that, what I would really want you to walk away today with at the end is with the knowledge that perspective is incredibly powerful, that trust closes communication gaps, and your ability to influence strengthens the information that you can provide and receive when it comes to feedback. So if for some reason you don't walk away with that, then hold me accountable and let me know what questions you have. So I'll start with one of my favorite quotes. Maya Angelou said that I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I like this quote. In fact, I love this quote so much and use it so frequently because emotions, how we feel in a certain moment, probably resonates with us much longer as a memory than something that we've read or something that we've heard or even something that we've seen. It's usually the emotion that we feel in the moment of hearing and seeing and doing that causes us to react or not react a lot of times. And we as individuals can impact how other people hear our message, really kind of based sometimes on how they feel by what our message actually is. And in today's world where things happen so fast because everything is connected, where people make decisions so quickly and everything is automated or digitalized or using robotics, what sets us apart from all of that is what we call human skills. Well, some people call them soft skills, but to me, they're the hardest skills to actually try and develop. So I use human skills. And so if that's what sets us apart, what can we do to really make sure that we're developing them so that we're effective? One of the pieces that's most powerful, I think, is the ability to take a look at perspectives that are different than yours. And we walk through life every single day making judgments. It's just natural reaction. But when we can challenge ourselves by asking the question, what is somebody else thinking? What is somebody else feeling? What don't I know about the situation? Whenever we are communicating with someone, we have that ability to take a pause for a second and learn more about what's going on. And so I want to share a story with you that I think kind of really resonates when it comes to perspective. When my daughter was in 6th grade, the first grade for middle school here in Greenville, she came up to me one afternoon and she said, "Mom, I'm really scared. This girl, she wants to fight me, and she's going to want to fight me tomorrow. And I don't want to fight her, and I'm kind of scared to go to school." And so I sat down and I said, "Well, sweetie, why don't you tell me a little bit more about this?" And she said, "Well, we were all in gym class and we had free time. And so there were several girls that were off to the side and they were dancing and they started twerking. And the gym teacher came over and told them to stop. And my friend and I were kind of sitting there watching them. And so when she turned around and left, they started twerking again. And if you're not familiar with what that is, it's a very suggestive dance move. And so we were still watching them, but when the gym teacher turned around to come over to them because they were now going to get in trouble because they continued to do what she didn't do, my friend and I turned around and walked away. And later, one of the girls who got in trouble called my daughter racist for not being there, not staying in that situation. And she's like, "Mom, I don't know where that's coming from because I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I said, I don't think I did anything." And I asked her, I said, "You know what, honey, I know that might not have been your intent, but let's think of it from her side. What might she have, how might she have been looking at it that's how she felt?" And she's like, She started to think about it, and then she came back and she said, well, I guess because my friend and I were watching them, maybe they were performing for us. And they were performing for us, so we were just as much at the situation as other people were, as they were for doing it. And by walking away, we didn't accept responsibility for that. Now, I am actually using the words that I would have liked for her to say, but eventually that's what she meant from it all. And so we talked about it a little while, and I said, it's really easy for people to get very upset, especially when there's an emotional trigger that's related to it. But instead of, fighting with them, I said, it's best to try and have a conversation so that you can share perspectives. But you're given the opportunity to have a stronger position in the conversation by understanding the perspective of where someone else is coming from. And so we have a lot of confirmation bias in the world today. We choose what information we want to receive based upon where we're receiving it from. And if it's information we don't like to hear, we can very easily turn it off. Or again, use that information to confirm what we already know based upon how we look at
And Nikki,
it.
that's a
So,
really good point, because I was thinking about something in my counseling background that talked about meeting people where they are. And I don't know if that's sort of the way, if that's kind of the language that you use, or if there's another way that you use it, but I really thought it was great because instead of trying to pull somebody to your viewpoint, is meeting them where they are and then kind of walking with them on that journey. So what are your thoughts on that?
absolutely. That's a great way to describe it. In coaching, in the coaching profession, a lot of times we tend to describe it as stepping away from the forest to see the trees.
Mhm.
Now, here is the opportunity, step back, see a big picture, understand there might be a different view from someone else. And then that gives you greater insight to further on the conversation. But you're absolutely right. Too many times today, we want to stick with what we know and where we're coming from. And if we refuse to see somebody else's view, why do we expect them to see our view?
Right.
Thank you for sharing that. And so ultimately, one of the best ways that you can step back to take a look at what other perspectives are is to actually question your assumptions. A lot of times when I hear people telling me about their frustration for the day or why they might be really upset with someone, they'll use a whole lot of adjectives about whatever the person is doing. And when I ask a question is, what assumptions are you making? They have put what they thought that the message was that the person was giving, and the words may not align to that, but based upon whatever previous relationship was or the tone that was being used, they made assumptions based on it. A lot of times before I facilitate a workshop or a class, I look at the class or even when I'm coaching someone one-on-one, I preempt it by letting them know, I said, if you're looking at me and I make this face, I'm not mad. I'm not judging. I'm thinking. And as many times as my husband and my children still point that face out to me, I still can't stop making that face when I'm listening. So if you see that face, just know that what you've said is extremely profound and I'm thinking. So I have to preempt that because people will see that face and make the assumption that I'm mad or that what they said was wrong. And that's not what I want to communicate to someone. So by questioning people's assumptions, by questioning your own assumptions, by questioning your assumptions, you have that opportunity to really kind of reset and be more open to what it is that they might really be saying versus how you actually heard it. This actually opens up your creativity. This triggers that growth mindset. This allows you to ask maybe more questions and learn more and really kind of again take you back to viewing things in the bigger picture. Does anyone have any questions around this?
Nikki, I do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hi, Nikki. I want to go back to your story as far as your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the conflict resolution then?
So I asked her, I said, honey, when you get to school in the morning, just talk to a teacher. If after you talk to her and tell her that you apologize, you didn't intend for her to feel that way, that you were watching and you turned around and walked away and did not realize that the impact that you made by that action, and that if she wanted to, that Amelia would go to the gym teacher. And so if she still felt that way, like she wanted to fight about it afterwards, for Amelia to go to a teacher. So believe it or not, she walked up to her in sixth grade speak, just, let her know. She said, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for you to feel that way. I just thought we were watching, and then we turned around because I thought you didn't want us to watch you get in trouble. And there was a part that I didn't want to get in trouble too. And then it was over, and they ended up becoming friends. So that's kind of how that happened. But it's still very easy to be triggered by something sometimes and jump to hit those conclusions.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? One of the things I like to say sometimes is, we make assumptions a whole lot. I used to lead a workshop around, kind of like a culture orientation. And before we would ever get started, I would stand up in front of the room and I would ask people to guess what my cultural background was. And I would get everything from Italian or, English, maybe Scottish. And then I let them know that I was half Filipino. And they would sit back and say, what? Wait a second, you don't look like that. And my dad is Filipino. And my mom's Scottish background took way over when it came to genetics. So you just can't do that. You can't jump to conclusions when you have these interactions with people. If there are no more questions, what about those relationships that you have with people that feel like they're broken? Ultimately, if we look in the past, we have relationships with people, and I'll stick to the business side of things. There are people that we have to continue to work with or collaborate with that it's been broken at some point in time. And we tend to avoid them or just not listen to them. But for us to be successful moving forward, we just have to sometimes understand that regardless, we sit back and wait for them to leave or not have to work with them anymore, we're hurting ourselves just as much. And sometimes it's very easy to resent people based upon whatever the past may have happened in a collaborative moment, or what you felt that they may have done. And my husband has a quote that he shared with me that I still use all the time, and it's that resentment is like swallowing poison and expecting the other person to die. So, because ultimately, when you resent people, you're the one that's carrying it all around. It probably has no impact on the other person. So if all you're doing is hurting yourself, how do you move forward? Well, hopefully, when you're in a working relationship with someone, you can be professional enough that after you just step over the resentment or let it go for the sake of just letting it go, you're able to have a conversation with them And it's an honest conversation around the fact, hey, we still have to work together. I know that there's a lot of conflict between us. You know, I like to think maybe we can work with that and make it a more productive conflict, but we have to figure out how we can continue to work together so that we can move forward, because working together is just one of the things that we're responsible for. So hopefully we can all be adults about it. When you're having that conversation, if it comes to, the actions that the other person did or what you did, you have to have that conversation from a place of, this is how I felt by that, or this is how I saw that, and this is how, why I acted the way I did. And it's not about what the other person did, it's about how you felt. And coming from that, hopefully you have the ability to then step over it and move forward and agree to disagree. Maybe that person becomes the devil's advocate to all the things you want to do, which then strengthens your arguments or your persuasive techniques for what you're trying to implement. So it's just something to think about when it comes to perspective and repairing some of those relationships that you need to have for work.
And Nikki, I have a question about, what if there's a power differential within the relationship, or between the relationship? Like it might be a supervisor and a supervisee. How does that work with repairing a relationship? How is that? How might that be different?
So I can sometimes be naive that people all have good intentions. And the thing is maybe they don't, but you may be surprised to find that, just sitting down and having an honest conversation, in the sense of what you want to see as a part of that relationship, even if it's up or if it's down. And what do they need to see from you in order to increase your trust so that you can repair that relationship? If it's not something that you can ever get past and it's impacting your performance or how your performance is reviewed, then you're just going to have to take the next steps as a result of that. Because if that's not something that can be fixed, chances are you're not the only one.
Right. That's a good point.
And document.
Yes.
So.
But Nikki, if I can interject a little bit here, what I find with my clients is that like there's a social contract, so to speak. We could call it a social construct if we're talking academics, but we're talking the business world. And I think a lot of times the word trust is used, and it's used as the overall goal. But I think sometimes what it really means, and people don't interject this as often, and I find this with my clients, is that it's just capabilities. It's not necessarily that the person doesn't trust you, the person. It's that that person doesn't have the capability to do that particular whatever it is, and therefore it appears, the word is trust. But really it's not a lot of times it's a lack of I guess having the understanding that what builds trust, or what makes that, as a, it's easy to say, oh, that's trust. It's easy to say, oh, that's this, that's that, and the big picture thing. But really, I think from my clients, is capabilities is what I see. It's not that the person doesn't trust them, it's that they don't have that capability for them to say, okay, let me give you this opportunity.
So when you say capability like that, you're not talking about capability for skills within the job itself. You're talking about capability for stepping over whatever it is that is impacting the relationship.
It could be for a number of things. Of course, for the relationship, then it becomes, you know, a lot of the things that you had mentioned earlier, how each other feel and those kind of things, emotions in the moment. Uh, and, you know, that's where like executive presence and things like that come in, and the ability to regardless of who the person is, to have some respect for each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes self-respect and being able to communicate uh, and have situational awareness.
So there is a class that I teach. It's actually Hershey's version of situational leadership. And there is a big part of situational leadership that talks about the difference between capability and ability. And the assumption is, and most times you were hired for a position because of your capability, but it doesn't mean that you automatically know how to do it because it's something you haven't done before for this specific company or in this specific role. And by making that assumption, you can have negative reaction because your expectation was so much higher and you didn't provide the support for someone to actually be able to do it to meet your expectations. So, you know, it's when you're in a leadership position, and I use this information a lot. I believe the statistics are 80% of, no, I'm sorry, 70% of the people promoted into leadership positions were promoted because technically they're very good at the job that they had beforehand. But then they're not supported in the skills that they need in that new position. So they keep doing what they were good at, what got them there. But the thing is that of those who fail in those leadership positions, 80% of them fail due to a lack of those human skills. And that's the ability really to be able to do just this, be able to repair those relationships or see the bigger picture, to be able to look forward and realize this is something that needs to happen or be built, or have these frank discussions with people so that we can move forward.
And I'll add, if we can, some of the questions will probably end up being answered through the rest of, you know, through some of the presentation flow. So if you could, I'm going to keep reading the chats. And this is great, you know, great discussion, but in order to, just for the sake of time, if we could, if you have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat box, and then we can kind of create a discussion based on that, so we don't get stuck too much. Okay.
Thank you, Sally. So let me go on. And this is part of what I was kind of alluding to. A lot of times with communication problems, there's a very, very big difference between what the message is that you intended and how it was interpreted by someone else. And that could be a very big gap. And what actually fills that gap is just that, it's trust. So when there's an absence of trust, it doesn't matter what your intent for the message is. I could be saying that the sky is blue, but someone else hears that I need to be putting on sunscreen. You know, if that trust is not there, you're not going to close the gap between what your intended message is and how it's being interpreted. And what that comes back around to is, you know, what's that trust involves a lot of different things. So as far as that trust is concerned, it contains the ability to be transparent. You know, are you somebody who brings the whole truth into letting people know the good and the bad? Or even if you can't let them know something, that you let them know, that's not something I can share right now, but when I can, I will definitely be able to communicate that to you. But it goes both ways. So somebody else, so you do this, but that's the same thing as far as what you're actually receiving. Authenticity is, speaking the truth as it is to you, but more so, are you aligned to your own integrity of values? Are you someone whose actions follow what it is that's most important to you, or do you say one thing and do another? So do you stand up for what you believe in? But it goes again, same thing for the other person. Do you see this in the other person? And then there's reliability. And I was talking to Sally about this earlier today. One of my core values is responsibility, in the sense that when I say I'm going to do something, then I try and move mountains to make sure that I get it done. And sometimes that means working a lot later or longer hours, but it's something that's important to me. But I have a tendency to overcommit. And when I overcommit, then maybe I'm not getting the things done that I said that I would do, or I forget to do something, or I'm running late to meetings. And that being overcommitted actually impacts how reliable people see that I might be, which has an impact in trust. And there's selflessness. Are you putting your own needs, your need for success, in front of other people's needs? Or do they genuinely feel like you care enough about them and their success? And it also, all of this goes both ways. Do they feel like you feel like they care about you as well? And when you see skills down there, obviously we're not all perfect in everything, and we don't all know everything. There's more that I don't know than I will ever know. But am I honest about that with people? And the things that I am skilled at, do people see that I do that? Or am I actually saying that I do things really well and it's not what people see? So this is really, are you doing your best work? All of these feed into trust, because trust is so big. So if you can take the second to have a little bit more awareness and ask yourself some of these questions around transparency and authenticity, reliability, selflessness, and skills, and see if there are gaps anywhere. Because if you're leading people, you almost have to trust first for other people to trust you. And if you don't trust them, then it may impact how they trust you. It's funny when I think about intent versus interpretation, I use a mother-in-law story. We all have a mother-in-law story. And when I was first married, I wanted to have Thanksgiving at my house. And when I called my mother-in-law to talk about it, she came back with, "Oh, okay, soup? You're serving soup? That's fine." Well, how am I interpreting that message? It's an interpretation that, okay, well, you don't like what I'm doing, but she never said that she didn't like what I was doing. And so it had to, that kind of impacted. I didn't have Thanksgiving at my house for like 15 years as a result of that. And so really we came to a realization, because I let her know that due to my personality type, I really needed her to tell me how she really felt about something. And then we could work together, because I interpreted the message and it wasn't what she was actually saying, and it impacted our relationship. Obviously, we've moved past that, but that's just one example. All of this impacts your credibility, and your credibility is what's said when you're not even speaking. It's what lives with you for a really long time. It's what people would think of and say about you when you may not even be in the room. And if that credibility is good, then chances are you've built trust with a certain amount of people.
Nikki, yeah, there's a question that came, and I don't know who it is. It's just this iPhone, but it talks about situations with client relationships, where your business is really relying on that client, and the client becomes disrespectful, and that creates conflict between people or between two organizations. What sort of is the best approach? And if you've already had, let's say meetings to discuss it, what would be an approach in sort of a client relationship? Or do you want them to maybe, I don't know if you want them to expound on that a little bit more?
I probably have some questions around that, as well as what's within their control in that relationship.
Right.
Because ultimately you can't control what somebody else is doing. Mm-hmm. And then coming back and asking yourself, what is this costing me? To continue to have this relationship. And because I don't think any of us deserve to be disrespected on a regular basis. And if that's what we're having to do, then that's going to impact how we live our lives.
Right.
So I would probably, whomever asked that question, you're more than welcome to reach out to me afterwards, or if we have time at the end to discuss that.
Okay.
So when I finished up around credibility, I actually wrote a note around this, because whether or not you've established your credibility with people, when you have it, it greatly increases the amount of influence that you have. It builds your influence. And when I started with BMW, we do several needs, surveys with managers, and after presentation skills, everybody wants presentation skills training, came the class like an influencing without authority. A lot of people keep asking, influencing without authority. It's what they want more than anything else. And, I always come back with, if you're influencing only because you have authority, how much loyalty is there in that? I would want to see that people are influencing without authority, even if they do have it, because there's not a lot of loyalty if they're only doing it because they're scared of getting in trouble. And people will use that a lot of times as a tool. So the challenge really is how are you going to influence people without authority? And when you've built the trust, when you have proven the fact that you are looking at other people's perspectives, when you are really aware of how you think and how you feel affects what you do, and people genuinely feel like you care about them or you care about what this situation is, your ability to influence others increases tremendously. I hope that's been everybody else's experience as well. But usually a lot of times when we have someone who is incredibly credible, we find that we will follow what they say or take their advice a lot easier when that's the case, versus someone who is not credible and we kind of discount what they're telling us. Does anybody have anything to add with us?
Yeah, Paul made a really good point, how influence is leadership, and really you can kind of lead from any chair. You can lead, you don't have to be the most the person who is at the head of the table. You can lead, by example. There's so many ways for you to be able to lead, so.
Absolutely. In fact, was my next piece, is the fact that influence is leadership. And leadership is not defined by your title. Leadership is defined by what you do and how you do it. And, leadership and influence needs to happen up and down as well as across. you know, someone had said something to me one time about how, well, I want you to be on the project because people do things that you need them to. And I was like, well, you can do the same thing. You can have the same results as well. I said, just sit back and think about how you're communicating with people, and are you transparent with the expectations? Do you feel like you've earned trust with them? Do they see the bigger picture? And you may find that your ability to influence becomes a lot stronger when you're trusted and you have that openness. You get a lot more buy-in. And with that buy-in comes the ability to provide good feedback. Feedback is tough sometimes. We will sometimes very much discount what we hear from other people because of who it may have even come from. And our ability to receive feedback automatically increases, well, when we have a good ability to receive feedback, that automatically increases your ability to give feedback, because we're a lot more aware of the pieces that are involved. I was talking with one of the leaders that I work with, has several people report to her, and she was saying that she really, she has a hard time, learning a lot of personal details about her people, because then when she has to give them feedback, it's a lot more difficult to do so. And so I actually said, well, let me share a story with you. So the person that hired me for my role now is, I look up to, I consider her a mentor, and actually had to become her proxy when she was pulled out into a project, and she's actually in a different role now. And at the end of most days, we would have the opportunity to kind of come together and talk about the project that she was on, and challenges that I was seeing, and just collaborate. So it was like 6 o'clock that night, and we're just standing talking to each other, and she looks at me and she's like, "Oh, Nikki, you have some food in your teeth." And at first I was really kind of initially embarrassed. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm like reaching down to my desk to grab a toothbrush because I'm like, oh, I'm embarrassed. And then all of a sudden it hit me. It's been 6 hours since I've eaten something. 6 hours. And in that time, I was over on the floor in manufacturing, and I had countless number of face-to-face conversations. I was in meetings with people. I gave a presentation. And all those people I spoke to cared more about their embarrassment of pointing out the fact that I had a big old piece of pepper stuck in my teeth than about the fact that I was going to be facing a lot of people after I stopped talking to them. And, it kind of hit me of, oh, okay, wow. So caring about people really means that you are giving them the feedback. You want them to be successful. And that's the way we need to look at things, because behavior a lot of times can be just like that piece of pepper stuck in your teeth. You have no idea what you're doing. Everybody else sees it, and no one's letting you know what it is. And so until you're able to feel comfortable enough to say, it's not personal, I just want you to be successful and provide that gift to someone else, then hopefully you're able to grow from it and see it for what it is. And that's just it. It's a gift. It's because you care that you're providing it. It's because someone cares about you that they're giving it back to you. It's also a gift because it reveals those blind spots, and you can grow from it. But again, to go back to where I started with perspective, not everybody's feedback to you may be quite as powerful. Maybe they're coming from a very different place, and how they interpreted what you did was not your intention at all. And that is just as powerful to hear and to listen to it and accept it, because what it does do is it opens you up to those other perceptions and gives you that opportunity to grow and be prepared for someone else that may take it in a different way. Are there any questions around that? Okay. So basically what it all comes down to is that it's related. You know, it's your ability to be open to perspectives gives you the opportunity to see what might be interpreted by other people when there's communication. And hopefully you'll see that by building that trust, you're building your credibility. And that gives you the opportunity to grow your influence with people, and hopefully see that you'll end up being a lot more successful with a lot less effort, because you are working together with the people that you need to, or you find that you get greater buy-in for what it is that you're trying to achieve. So walking away from this today, you know, there's a lot of information in there, and I only ask, walk away with one thing. If you're going to walk away with one thing from today, let it be one of these bullet points. So ask yourself one question based upon a conversation that you may have from today to tonight. What assumptions am I making? Or identify one relationship that really needs to be fixed, and commit to yourself when you're going to have a conversation with that person around fixing that relationship, and write that down. Or check with the person if your intended message matches how they interpret it. Just one conversation that you're having today. Or identify one person who you feel like trusts you, and find out from them why they trust you. What is it that they see from you that actually built that trust? Or give one person the gift of feedback today. So if you walk away at the end of the webinar, the conversation that we're all having today, and by doing just one of those things, then I feel like I was successful with all of you. So, and that's the end. Does anybody have any questions?
I'm just, I don't know where to start, but I think feedback for me is the big question: how to do it appropriately and when to do it.
The more frequently you do it, the easier it is. More frequently you do it, the easier it is. A lot of times we'll see, like, for example, someone, actually my boss, there is a service partner that we work with, who is helping coordinate one of the big projects that I'm on. And, there was an email that was sent out, and the grammar really wasn't, there was opportunity to better grammar. Well, it's really easy to just let it go, right? And say, well, let me wait till I see him, and when we actually have a conversation, I'll bring it up. But then it kind of uncomfortable, and the longer you let it go, the harder it is to have that conversation, and then it becomes something bigger. So the easier is to address it right then and there, and come back around to, hey, when I got this, I just wanted to say that, I saw that there were a couple of grammatical errors, and I was just curious, is there anything that I can help with to help you support, overcoming that? Or, was this just a situation where you rushed to do it and didn't read over it one time? But because the message goes out to a whole lot of people, well, you may want to just make sure you read over it or run a grammar check really quick, just because they're all managers that are receiving it. And I want you to not, I don't want them to think that about you. And so it's, the more often you do it, the easier it gets.
Right.
I think too, one of the things that really kind of brought it home to me when I used to read Brene Brown a lot, and one of the things that she said in talking about, she had a story about her husband and, you know, kind of how she felt like he was feeling something, and she assumed all of this whole thing about the relationship. And one of the things that she talked about was, in order to sort of have that conversation with him, which is a very to say, the story I'm making up in my head is this, you know, and it kind of took away some of that, you know, defensiveness in him, where she owned her perspective of the story. She owned that she was, you know, creating something in her head that may not have been in any way close to what he was feeling, and it wasn't, you know, he was feeling something completely different, and reacting in a way based on his thoughts. So I think that's it's not necessarily something that you should, you know, say the story I'm making up in my head in a professional situation, but there's a way to kind of go about it to where you can kind of say, you know, from my point of view, this is how I am seeing the situation, but that may not necessarily be what's happening on your end. How do we, you know, and then how do you kind of go forward with that?
Well, and that, you think that happens a lot with work. Let's just say, okay, the current situation that we're in, you know, you're not able to be in the office, so to speak, and therefore, some of your opportunities to just kind of be in the moment and know more about what people are other conversations that might be going on, or other situations, and you feel a little on an island by yourself, and you lack that one-on-one. So you may hear about, if your project is the one that got cut in budget cuts, and now you're thinking, okay, now does that mean I'm going to lose my job? You know, okay, now you're operating from a place of fear, and you're starting to make more assumptions. So now there's a meeting and you didn't get called on in that meeting. And all that's doing is feeding this assumption that you had, because your project was the one that was cut. And so now it becomes around, okay, so now you're operating from a place of fear, and every decision and action that you make after that, you may actually just be writing your own future, because you're not actually operating at your best capacity.
Absolutely. The lizard brain kicks in. Does anybody have any other comments or? Well, Nikki, this has just been great. Thank you so much for taking the time and, you know, talking with us. You know, we just appreciate you so much.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Like I said, I'm incredibly passionate about this. I believe that everybody has the ability to grow to be their best selves. That's me being, my husband would say I'm naive by that, but I like being in that place in life. So, and I see that my purpose in the world is to help support people that do want to become their best selves. So thank you for giving me this opportunity and this platform to do this, so I could meet everybody. And thank you everybody for listening in today. I hope that you're able to take something away from this.
Thank you for supporting us.
And we will have a recording sent to you. So all of this will be recorded, and then will be put up. I'll send everybody a link. I'll also, we'll have it on our YouTube channel and on our website. So just check it out then. Thank you so much for joining, and we appreciate your time. Bye, you guys. Have a good weekend.